Beyond the buzzer, inside the game, this is SportsIQ with Larry Smith.
Hope you had a good weekend. Glad you're with us here on the SportsIQ. Man, good weekend here. Man, how about the games? We'll talk more about not just, college football, kind of went as we thought, right? I mean, two games were very competitive, two games not so much. We thought that was going to happen. So we got our fill. We got our money's worth with that. NFL, a lot of storylines there we'll get to here in a moment. It's a big holiday week. If you're traveling, again, be sure you take us with us. We've got the SportsIQ podcast. It is on it's on Apple, it's on Spotify, it's everywhere you find it. It's now on YouTube as well. You can find it there too. By the way, also be sure you check out the video shorts and subscribe, and so you get these sent to you every day. There are moments of awe that we close every show with, and we save those there. Really popular feature, and we love that everyone really appreciates it. We kind of dig those up. Producer Tony doing a great job finding those little tidbits for us that make us hopefully a little different than what you have elsewhere. Great conversation here all week. Today, we've got Marc Weiszer here standing by in about 4 minutes to talk Georgia football, as the Bulldogs now know who they're going to play in the Sugar Bowl. All SEC matchup, Georgia, Ole Miss. Really love this matchup, and we'll talk more about that later. Also, later on, top seed Indiana. Shannon Griffith joining us once again, the coach. Going to talk about the Hoosiers taking on Alabama in that game. Coming up later on this week, we'll talk a little NFL with an analyst. Also, we'll get a little Miami Hurricanes perspective after they got the big win. At Texas A&M, a defensive struggle in the wind. Again, equally entertaining as a Friday night game, but the Hurricanes move on, and they're vindicated now. Those who think they didn't belong, not so much. They do. They're in the quarterfinals. A bit later in our holiday shows also, we're going to run an interview we did a while back with Eric Kramer. He is the former NFL quarterback, just celebrated a birthday last week, and we're so thankful that he did. Star quarterback for NC State back in the day, the Bears and the Lions. He attempted suicide several years ago and lived. And his story is amazing. The journey he has taken, what led him to that very dark place, and his journey out of that darkness. It is a story that we'll run later this week. So be sure, as you're bopping around, again, be sure to kind of check that out. It'll, as usual, about 50 minutes. And so we'll have that. We think it's something that's worthwhile to put out there. And a moment, I think, of inspiration. Don't let the dark theme scare you away. Everyone want to be uplifted, this story is one that'll do it for you. So Eric is a longtime friend. I've known him more than 20 years, and I appreciate that he opened up and allowed me to tell his story, as he's now written a book about other things as well. So that's coming up later on this week. Let's get to today right now in our headlines. Week 16 in the NFL, almost in the books. Tonight, the Colts and Niners do battle at Lucas Oil Stadium, where a handful of AFC teams will be rooting hard for the 49ers. If San Fran beats Indy, then the Bills, Chargers, and the suddenly red-hot Jacksonville Jaguars all clinch spots in the postseason. Those three got to that position with wins on Sunday. The Jags ending the 11-game winning streak of the Broncos with a road win in Denver. How impressive was that? 34-20. Trevor Lawrence has really come on strong, throwing 3 touchdown passes, ran for another score as well. In Cleveland, the Bills getting 117 yards rushing and 2 scores from James Cook on the way to a 23-20 win over the Browns. Josh Allen suffered a foot injury late in the first half and was held without a touchdown, making it just the 3rd time in his career that he did not score. Crazy as that. Justin Herbert, despite his broken non-throwing hand, had enough in the tank to toss 2 TD passes and sneak in another score from the 1 to lead the Chargers to the 34-17 win over the Cowboys. This season marks 30 years without a Super Bowl appearance for America's team, the Cowboys. Well, they make a lot of money off the field, but not much success on the field. Hard to believe, 30 years. The Houston Texans extending their winning streak to 7. A hard-fought win over the Raiders at home. C.J. Stroud had a TD pass. Derek Stingley took a pick 6 to the house to keep Houston just a game behind Jacksonville in the AFC South. Boy, I tell you what, Stroud's looking great since coming back from that concussion. Drake May leading the Patriots to a 28-24 win over the Ravens. That clinches a playoff spot for New England. May guiding New England to a pair of fourth-quarter touchdowns, rallying his team from an 11-point deficit with a 28-24 victory. The Pats can secure that East Division title with 2 wins in their final 2 games, or with a loss by Buffalo in either of their 2 contests. NFC South Division contenders, the Panthers holding off the visiting Bucs 23-20. So Carolina now, what a resurgence there, taking sole possession of the NFC South at an 8-7 record. They could wrap up the NFC South next Sunday with a win over Seattle and a Tampa Bay loss to Miami. But if the Bucs beat the Dolphins, Carolina would need to beat Tampa in the regular season finale. Yes, they beat each other twice in the final 3 weeks to end the Bucs' 4-year reign as division champs. The Steelers may have ended the Lions' 2-year run of the playoffs. Pittsburgh holding off Detroit 29-24. Jared Goff's touchdown on the final play negated by an offensive pass interference penalty on Amon-Ra St. Brown. The Lions have one chance now to make the playoffs. They got to win their final 2 contests and have Green Bay lose both of their last 2 games. The last time Detroit made the playoffs 3 straight years was way back in 1993-95. That's how long that has been. Saints fans may have found the new favorite in Tyler Shuck. He passed for 308 yards, a rookie from Louisville getting his first 300-yard game, and connected with Chris Olave for 2 scores. Saints beat down the Jets 29-6. Hey, Shuck is now 4-3 as a starter in New Orleans. Other winners include the Bengals, Titans, Vikings, and Falcons. And, of course, Saturday night it was the Bears over the Packers in overtime. What a thriller there. Caleb Williams, touchdown pass in OT, lifting them over the Pack. Jordan Love, by the way, knocked out with a possible concussion, and so we'll see what his future holds. Okay, producer Tony has our first guest.
Well, Larry, thanks so much. And, one of the games we're all going to be keeping an eye on next week when we get back to the college football playoff is going to be the rematch in the Sugar Bowl between Georgia and Ole Miss. And joining us today to kind of discuss that is Marc Weiszer. He is the Georgia beat reporter for the Athens Banner-Herald. Marc, thanks so much for taking some time and talking with us today.
Yeah, no problem. Good to be with you.
So let's look back at that first game. It was an interesting contest, nip and tuck for 3 quarters, but Georgia really took over in that fourth quarter. What did they find in that fourth quarter? What did you see from that team at that moment?
Well, the big thing is they started to get some stops on defense. Ole Miss scored touchdowns on their first 5 possessions of the game. It wasn't like Georgia was getting stopped either. Really, not Peyton Woodring, their punter, the Ray Guy Award winner, didn't come on the field at all. They didn't have to use him. So, it was a matter of Georgia getting stops. And that happened. And Trinidad Chambliss, I think, was a little bit rattled. At least he said that on SEC Network yesterday that the crowd got to him a little bit. So it'd be interesting to see, on a neutral or maybe even more Ole Miss, crowd, since it's closer to Oxford. We'll see how that plays out. How that would look for him and that offense.
Gunnar Stockton had just a tremendous game that night, threw for 289, 4 touchdowns. Would you say that was like his coming of age ball game, Marc?
No, I mean, certainly it was another, chapter in his progression, guy that ended up being 7th in the Heisman Trophy voting. Preseason, there was a lot of questions about what Georgia had at quarterback. Whether he was capable of being a guy to lead him to the college football playoff, at least in some circles. I think it was a Tennessee game going on the road, throwing that dart on 4th down, converting the 2-point conversion pass, the Bulldogs winning in overtime. I think that was more of, his coming of age of sorts as a quarterback.
What do you expect different in a rematch with Ole Miss?
It'll be interesting how the layoff affects Georgia. I mean, they were playing better than anyone in the country, arguably. When they won the SEC championship, their defense is so much better than it was when they played Ole Miss. They've given up 2 touchdowns on defense in the last 4 games. Obviously held Alabama to 1 touchdown. Really stymied Texas as well. So I think with Ole Miss, with Lane Kiffin no longer being there, with kind of the program energized under Pete Golding, and probably some momentum from just playing a game, what was it? I guess, I don't know, do the math, but they just played a game over the weekend. And then I guess it'll be like 12 days or something before they play in the Sugar Bowl in between. I think coaches like Kirby Smart are always worried about what a long layoff means for his team that was playing so well.
Yeah, it was odd last year because, as I remember, all 4 of the teams that had the buys ended up losing in that next weekend, right? And people were wondering about how the schedule was, how it worked out. Would you think that Kirby will do anything different to kind of break up that rhythm a little bit? Was he a little more strenuous with the guys before their break here for Christmas time?
Yeah, I'm not so sure. I know he said he talked to a lot of his colleagues in the coaching profession. I don't know if he really came up. I mean, I think every year he's going to kind of modify it, here or there, depending on whether he sees his guys as really banged up and injured, whether he wants to work on something in particular. With Ole Miss, maybe more work, on the back end, considering how many yards they threw for last time, which was 263 as I look at the stats. You mentioned the four teams that lost that had the buys. I think part of that was because two of them were teams that were placed up there based on how they didn't do the top four seeds or the top four rankings last year. You had maybe some lesser teams that got buys because they, the way the format was last year. So we'll see how it plays out this year. I'm sure Georgia, if they lose again, there's going to be questions. Obviously they lost to Notre Dame about what that layoff meant and if they won't really. If it's a disadvantage to have a bye.
Coming in to the ballgame, you touched on it briefly. The Georgia defense has really gotten a lot better. They were good. Now they're bordering on outstanding right now. I mean, they shut down the Alabama run game in that SEC championship, so they were really hitting their stride. How did it come together? What's been the straw that kind of brought that whole thing together this season? It's just getting to know each other, more playing time?
I think it's, you look at the development of a guy like Ellis Robinson, who, the beginning of the season really had some rough plays that he was beaten on, and people were wondering, here's this guy that I think was number one in the nation, like overall prospect when he came in, at least in one of the services, maybe the 247 Sports Composite. I can't remember which one it was, and he really wasn't living up to that kind of hype, but really has played just like that. The last, 2/3 of the season, maybe I'd say, I have to go back and look at the Ole Miss game particularly to see. I don't remember, how much he may have been victimized. But you look at the pass rush for Georgia. They finally have gotten to the quarterback and gotten sacks. Maybe not as many sacks as some other teams, but they're certainly affecting the quarterback a lot better. And you're seeing, whether Glenn Schumann's, dialing up more, or some of these guys that they were relying on, young guys, have really matured, and they've leaned on some guys from the recruiting class as well, to kind of take that next step. And they're kind of a force that way. And they've been emphasizing stopping the run, all the way back till, like February, March, and that's really paid off.
When you look at this Ole Miss team coming in, they often are high tempo, kind of play that up-tempo style. Do you see them continuing that based on what you might have seen in watching the Tulane game a little bit? Do you foresee them changing anything from the last time around, or they're still the same team despite not having Lane Kiffin?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say that the offense lost them the game at Georgia. I mean, they put up 35 points total.
Right.
I think defensively is where they really need. I mean, Georgia hasn't really put up, I guess, against Tennessee in that overtime game. They're not a team that's been winning by putting up 43 points like they did in that game. I mean, they beat Georgia Tech 16-9, 28-7 against Alabama. They're fine, burning the clock and holding onto the ball and playing turnover free if they can. They can win in many different ways. So I don't necessarily expect this is going to be, as high scoring a game. Every game is kind of its own animal. I certainly don't expect it to be 16-9. I think Trinidad Chambliss, Keywan Lacey, if he's okay, if his shoulder allows him to play, we'll see how that'll play out. This is a team that's capable of scoring, against Georgia. But they didn't always do that. I mean, Tulane is not at the level of SEC teams. So,
right.
But the offense, Charlie Weiss Jr. is still there. A lot of these offensive coaches that are going to LSU with Lane Kiffin are back and in the playoff coaching this offense.
From a Georgia perspective, when you're looking at how things are kind of setting up, the ground game is going to be key for a team like Georgia. They like to control the clock, like to run it. Do you see them being able to do that again against Ole Miss, being able to run the football pretty well?
Yeah, I mean, Nate Frazier's run the ball very well down the stretch of the season. He's kind of, Chauncey Bowens has been banged up. That's partially probably why. But they're relying on Josh McCray to kind of be a physical running back and pick up 2, 3, 4 yards. You saw Mike Bobo dial up a play where he lined up Roderick Robinson at fullback, a guy that was like 5th on the depth chart, and rolled him into on a screen pass. He scored a touchdown. So Mike Bobo's been very creative. Maybe Georgia doesn't rank as high as some other teams, stat wise, but he's getting this team to complementary football with this defense has really rose up this year, and the special teams has been pretty much outstanding all year.
What would it? We know the ultimate goal at Georgia every year is to win a national champion. Kirby's did the back-to-back titles a few years back. What would it mean to this program to get another one to show that dominance is still there in for Georgia football?
Look, Kirby's not going to have the kind of teams that he had in 21 and 22 in terms of NFL talent on the roster to that extent, just because it's so much more spread out in college football now. You see Indiana, you see Ole Miss, who's playing in their first college football playoff. You see other teams that are kind of, getting their shot to, rise to prominence nationally. This would be kind of the first championship for Georgia and Kirby Smart in this new NIL revenue share era. It was going on in 2022, if memory serves me correct, but not to this level. Carson Beck wasn't getting paid $3-4 million in 2022, obviously as a backup, and neither was Stetson Bennett to that extent. I'm sure Stetson wishes he was Georgia's starting quarterback today. I don't know what I don't know what it pays to be the third string quarterback for the Rams, but it would be a good time to be the Georgia quarterback.
Going in, to this ball game, if there's a couple things you want to see right off the bat, things you want to see in the first half to know it's probably going to be a good night for the Bulldogs, what would be those couple of things you would tell Bulldogs fans? Look for this, look for that. If we're doing this, doing that, it's going to be a successful evening.
You normally would say, the defense making stops early in the game, the offense putting together drives early in the game. But what you saw in Alabama, which was down 17-0 the other night against Oklahoma, came back to win. Georgia's had those kind of games right early in the season. That's how they were winning. They were climbing back from deficits. So, in general, I think Georgia needs to be able to run the ball and control the clock. Maybe keep that offense off the field for Ole Miss. Get turnovers. Georgia doesn't always create a lot of turnovers, getting some short fields, like they've done, in the Alabama game, I guess it was, right? Block a punt like that. Something like that is always good. But Georgia's playing to a certain level that I don't think it's necessarily one or two things. They need to just kind of play like they played down the stretch. You don't want to see any kind of poor habits kind of crop up that you haven't seen. They haven't had too many boneheaded penalties. They've been pretty disciplined, and Kirby knows about what it takes to advance in the playoff. He's done it before, and I think they'll have the guys certainly ready.
Do you think that Mississippi team, Ole Miss, is carrying a chip on their shoulder because of the Lane Kiffin thing coming into the ball game?
I think if they did, it was kind of probably what the result, what you saw. Tulane and Ole Miss had pretty much a similar result in blowout fashion, early in the season. I don't think by the time they get to New Orleans, it'll be that much. I think it's more maybe about, hey, Georgia got us. That's the one team that beat us. And, let's show that we can beat them and, keep on going on this season.
Sounds good. Marc Weiszer, thank you so much for joining us. Marc is the Georgia beat reporter for the Athens Banner-Herald. Really appreciate your insight into this ball game coming up, and enjoy your time down in New Orleans.
Sounds good. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. We'll be back on the SportsIQ. We're going to take a brief time out and continue the conversation right after this.
Are you tired of your website making your business look bad? Is your current web developer dropping the ball? Let's face it, if your website isn't making you money, it's broken. Let Neon Rain create a website that turns your visitors into customers. Neon Rain has worked with hundreds of businesses across North America, building custom websites and applications with modern designs that are easy to update and work well on mobile devices. They can do it for you too. What sets Neon Rain apart? They actually deliver on their promises. Call today for a free consultation. 303-957-3092. That's Neon Rain at 303-957-3092. Or visit them at neonrain.com.
You're listening to Sports IQ with Larry Smith.
Some other stories for you right now as we get to college football. We'll talk with producer Tony, kind of break down the games this weekend and look ahead to the quarterfinals as well. By the way, one guy who is not in the quarterfinals but is reaping the benefits of the college football playoff is Lane Kiffin, the erstwhile Ole Miss coach, now at LSU, getting a bonus because of what Ole Miss is doing. So his contract with LSU stipulates that he gets a bonus check every time Ole Miss wins in the playoffs, the team that he led to the regular season, outstanding season, regular season, and of course, getting into the playoff. Now he's not there. Pete Golding, the interim coach, is leading them instead. So because of Ole Miss's win over Tulane in the first round, Kiffin earns a $250,000 bonus from LSU, and it'll continue up to $1 million. If they win the next game against Georgia, he'll instead get $500,000. If they win the semifinal matchup, he will then get $750,000. If they win the national championship, Lane Kiffin, who now is shopping for furniture in Baton Rouge, will get $1 million bonus from LSU. By the way, Pete Golding will get the same bonus package as Ole Miss progresses to the playoffs, but however, he would get it from Ole Miss, not from LSU. So again, just the craziness there. Speaking of coaches, the exodus continues out of Ann Arbor. Chip Lindsey, the offensive coordinator for the Wolverines, will leave to become Missouri's shot caller for the offense. He spent just 1 year as the OC at Michigan and improved the offense. In 2024, Michigan ranked only 14th in scoring in the Big Ten. This year, they're up to 11th. In scoring in the Big Ten in 2025. So Chip Lindsey will not be a part of Michigan moving forward. Again, he's heading to Missouri, be part of Eli Drinkwich's staff. Some other news in college football: Kenny Dillingham signing a 5-year extension with Arizona State, and so he's sticking around. He will not be going to Michigan or anywhere else. He is right there. What a job he has done. He's only 35 years old. It's his alma mater, and so the Sun Devils organization keeping him there in Tempe for quite a while. Meanwhile, the match made in not heaven. The reports now out of that North Carolina and Bill Belichick are going to hire Bobby Petrino as offensive coordinator. You know, this is just a match made in. Yeah, I mean, I just can't listen. Petrino's a great offensive mind. Belichick needs help in the college game this year. Did not go. He learned right away. You don't have Tom Brady there. You don't have the organization you have in the NFL with Robert Kraft as the owner up in New England. It's a different ballgame, and they really struggled. But to see Belichick and Petrino working together, get your popcorn ready. Let's just leave it at that. How about in the FCS play? The finals are now set. The upstart Illinois State Redbirds will face Montana State in Nashville at Vanderbilt Stadium for the FCS title. Illinois State getting a big win this weekend. The Redbirds have just been red hot, excited about that. And so that comes up actually on January 5th, again in Nashville at Vandy's Stadium. Okay, let's get to some basketball over the weekend. How about Texas Tech knocking off Duke and not just beating the Blue Devils in New York to hand them their first loss of the season, but they had 3 players. They were out with injury. 2 other players fouled out, and their All-American JT Toppin straddled with 4 fouls, and yet they rallied from 17 points down to beat the Blue Devils 82-81. What a game there for Texas Tech. Grant McCausland, what he has done. Finally, he gets a chance to get a marquee win. Had some losses in ranked games earlier this season against Illinois and Arkansas, among others. UK, Kentucky, finally getting its first win over a ranked team, defeating a 22nd ranked St. John's in Atlanta as part of the CBS Sports Classic this weekend. UNC beating Ohio State in the other game there at State Farm Center. State Farm Arena, I believe they called it down there. It's named by State Farm. Used to be Phillips Arena. Now it's State Farm. Anyway, UK got the win. So BBN, they can calm down, have a nice Christmas because they were up in arms. They had not beaten a ranked team in 4 tries before Saturday. So, and by the way, also not only beating St. John's, they beat Rick Pitino, the former UK coach. So a little extra sugar on that cookie. Meanwhile, another story coming out, Georgetown suspending its head coach, Ed Cooley, for throwing a water bottle as he was mad that they lost to Xavier over the weekend. Cooley, the water bottle he threw, struck a child a few rows back. And so Ed Cooley, who really did a great job lifting up the Providence program, it just has not been the same for him in D.C. This Georgetown program still struggling to catch its footing there in the rugged Big East. And also in volleyball, what a thriller in this one. Texas A&M was down 6 points in the first set, rallied to win, and went on to sweep Kentucky in dominant fashion. So they swept. Not only did they beat Nebraska, the number 1 seed, at Nebraska in the Elite Eight, they swept both number 1 seed Pitt and a number 1 seeded Kentucky in the semifinals and finals. Did not lose a set in either match. And so Texas A&M, the Aggies, Jamie Morrison, great job as coach. They win their first ever NCAA volleyball title. Congrats on there in College Station. And our friend Trev Alberts, what a job he's doing as athletic director down there. And one more note, by the way, and if you missed it just before the weekend, in the WNBA, the contract talks continue. They've extended the collective bargaining agreement now. It's still another couple of weeks before it expires, but the players have now voted to approve a potential strike. So again, you heard it here first. Back earlier this fall, we were saying that, look, late summer, this thing is probably headed for a prolonged work stoppage. It's just the way these things go. They're nowhere close right now. And so it appears right now they've taken one step closer. The players have to saying, this isn't working. We're going to do something else. So again, we hope to get it worked out, but stay tuned. We think this goes on at least potentially for another couple of months. It has the potential to do that anyway. Okay, stay with us. Shannon Griffith talking Indiana Hoosiers football next on the Sports IQ.
You're locked in to Sports IQ with Larry Smith.
College football once again. Now we have the quarterfinals are set for the college football playoffs, and it is top seed Indiana taking on 9 seed Alabama in the Rose Bowl. Can't wait. As soon as that matchup was set, I'm like, that just sounds so cool to me. Indiana, Alabama out in Pasadena. Joining us once again is the coach, Shannon Griffith. He's a lead football analyst for Hoosiers.com. Shannon, good to talk to you again. Happy holidays to you. Before we get to moving forward, I want to look back a little bit. A couple of weeks ago in New York, Heisman Trophy, going to Mendoza, your quarterback there, and the first Indiana player to win that. It just goes to show, one, not only what a difference Curt Cignetti has made at Indiana in a short amount of time, but also, to me, the changing of the guard in college football. That I think there are another dozen, 15, maybe even 20 programs that now have a chance to have a seat at the table that traditionally have not.
Yeah, I just think the transfer portal, the rev share, NIL has totally changed the landscape of football as we've known it for the last couple seasons compared to the last 100 seasons. You could go all the way back. You always had the blue bloods of college football that have kind of been the top of the food chain in that category. But this has opened up a new avenue to allow teams like Indiana to become immediately competitive and potentially do what Indiana did this year, running the table, being the number 1 ranked team in the country. I think there's some out there that say that maybe Curt Cignetti is a bad thing because of some coaches are not living up to the example that he's setting, and have to answer the presidents and 80s question, why is Indiana the way Indiana is and we are not? But I think it's going to allow teams like Indiana, Texas Tech, you can just go right down the list of teams that maybe not have been as competitive as now being in a position to compete against the upper echelon of that food chain against the blue bloods of college football.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, and we've talked before. We always call it all during this crazy coaching search. It still isn't open. It still isn't over because Michigan hasn't picked their guy. More debacle. But I think we very simply call it the Signetti effect here on Sports IQ because it really is. It is, you got 3 years, maybe 5 years to rebuild. Now you've got 2 years. I mean, Michigan State, Jonathan Smith came in as he was the flavor of the month, right? One of the guys that had done it at Oregon State, and he comes in and he's already gone. You just don't get any kind of time. So great there for Indiana. And now looking forward, Big Ten champ. You've got the Heisman Trophy winner. By the way, we're doing our research. Since Archie Griffin won back-to-back in 74, 75 Heisman trophies for Ohio State, Mendoza is only the 6th Big Ten player to win the Heisman in the past 50 years. And the first in 19 years. It's crazy. But again, we think things are changing. Like we said, back-to-back national champs, top 2 seeds here. Let's see what happens here in 2025 and January 2026. Let's get to the game right now. Indiana, Alabama. Talk about what Indiana has been up to here. Obviously getting rested, getting healthy. That's the advantage of having a bye. You get the extra week off. They'll have almost a full month off since they beat Ohio State to win the Big Ten.
Yeah, I think you have to look at it from 2 different perspectives. I think Coach Signetti looks at it from the glass half full, that this time period has been a very good time period for them to heal the bumps and bruises that a 13-game schedule can create. They're not without loss, though, losing Stephen Daly to the most freakish accident after the Big Ten championship game when he was just high-fiving the fans along the stadium edge where he kind of had to jump up to do it. He landed wrong, and now he's gone for the year. And he was their most effective pass rusher and pressure on a quarterback that they had all for the latter part of the last half of the season. So now he's out. So that gives them time to kind of look at what they need to do to prepare themselves for this game. So having this time has been very helpful in that aspect of having to heal injuries, as well as look at how they're going to cope with that loss of Stephen Daly. So I think he looks at it as a positive. Now, some people may look at it from the perspective it's too much time off. You're not playing a competitive game. You don't get to keep the edge on and things of that magnitude. I'll leave that to the decisions of others to feel like what their opinion on that is. I've always been one of Coach Signetti's philosophy is if you use this time wisely, it can be very beneficial for your football team in order for them to come back at their strongest when they play Alabama on January 1.
And we saw this last year with the 4 teams that got the bye. All 4 lost their openers. I mean, we had 4 upsets in the quarterfinals. Mm-hmm. That was unusual. So, yeah, interesting to see how this works this time with all the teams. And the Big Ten champ, Oregon, was number 1 seed. Of course, you had Ohio State that probably in this format would have been maybe a 4 or 5 seed as an 8 seed. So let's also factor that in as well. A little unusual there. Mm-hmm. This Indiana team, I'll be honest. I told you this last time you were on here several weeks ago. Last time we talked to you, I have become a believer. I felt Curt Cignetti first year. Okay, lightning in a bottle, caught it first year. The pummeling of Illinois back in late September was the eye opener for me. All the talk of playing 3 money games, getting out of the Virginia game, which wound up being, the ACC regular season champ. Mm-hmm. That game, the efficiency on both sides of the ball was just, it was a Drago versus Apollo Rocky 4. I'm looking for the white towel to throw in, and mm-hmm. there. I just think this is a team right now that, just as you talked about, Curt Cignetti and his approach, the players buy in. I think it's the model that everyone's going to try to follow in college sports moving forward.
Yeah, he's got some unique thought processes as it pertains to how he handles the camp. Guys in fall camp, they very seldom tackle to the ground. I think they may have 1 or 2 days of actual live tackling because he doesn't believe in putting the stress on the body at that point in time. And it hasn't cost them in terms of missed tackles or, broken tackles in the last 2 seasons that he's been there at Indiana. So he does a lot of good things in the respect of player development and expectation and things of that magnitude that has been overly beneficial. and then utilizing the bye weeks in a way that enhances their performance and tries not to negate it. In other words, doing too much during a down period, because sometimes coaches get the feeling that if we're not doing enough of X, it's going to hurt us when it comes to Y. And that's the one thing that I don't think Cignetti buys into. I think he buys into what he believes his blueprint tells him to do. And he talks about it extensively about having a plan and executing the plan. And that's what he's done for 2 years. So he's been very unique in that approach. You saw Ryan Day this year kind of back off in terms of the number of snaps per game that he was trying to get his team in hopes of, negating the physicality of week in, week out. Some people will maybe not agree with that approach since they lost in the Big Ten, but championship. But I think there's a lot of different ways now that coaches are looking at how do you handle an intensified schedule, especially conference schedules, to get your teams to the peak performances in the months of November, late October, early November.
It's a constant, working in the laboratory, right? Coming up with the right auction, the right combination. Talking with Shannon Griffith, the coach. She is lead football analyst for Hoosiers.com. So Indiana, Alabama in the Rose Bowl. I've already said my favorite stadium in the entire country. Just there's nothing like it. You walk in and you're just in awe. I mean, when you drive up, you're just in awe. Right there in the valley, it's with all the mansions there right next to it on the road coming in. This Alabama team now, resilient, losing in the SEC championship game, but I think still, I've always said, was deserving of being here. What about this Crimson Tide team? What do they do that concerns you as Indiana goes up against them?
Well, when you put talent to talent, they're going to have, an unbelievable talented team similar to what Ohio State has, in terms of in their lineup. And Ty Simpson, the quarterback, and what he can do. You look at their defense. I mean, it's hard to run the ball against Alabama. I mean, they haven't given up a lot of rush yards. I mean, in the SEC championship, they gave up 140 to Georgia, and that was about it. But they're a very stingy defense. There's a lot of different storylines in this that center around Kalen DeBoer, Kane Womack, the DC, Nick Sheridan, the tight end coach, quarterback coach at one time. These guys were all at Indiana together back when Kalen DeBoer was the offensive coordinator, kind of around that COVID era. So there's that aspect of this story. And then, of course, Alabama being kind of the blue blood of the SEC. And you get people talking about, oh, it's Alabama and Indiana. And when you look at this aspect of it, this is a huge game for the Big Ten, because the SEC has their own viewpoints and opinions, very highly opinions of the SEC as it pertains to Alabama, Georgia, when you compare it to the Big Ten. So there's a lot of that riding on the line to also January 1. But Alabama, again, like you said, gets beaten the SEC championship team against a very good Georgia team. Then they go on the road to Oklahoma. And that's not an easy task either. And I don't think many gave them much chance. But what they did differently in this game, as opposed to the early game, they didn't turn it over. That game against Oklahoma early in the year, they turned it over like 4 times in that game and received touchdowns. So they really showed how good they really are against Oklahoma, especially spotting Oklahoma, 17 points, and all of a sudden they come roaring back, and the pick six that turned everything around, the 4th down call down inside the red zone that gave them their first touchdown. It was just a masterful job of coaching by them, and they're going to be a well-coached team in A to Z. And Indiana will definitely have to play their best football again against a very, very talented team in order to get a chance to win on January 1.
Yeah, you're right. Oklahoma, not an easy place to win. In fact, they lost there last year, lost the Sooners in Tuscaloosa this year. And I'm with you. That 17-0 deficit, I'm like, oh, my goodness. I mean, a lot of teams would have folded at that point. And you look up, they clawed back. Like you said, big plays on defense, tied it up, and then went on to take the win. Talk about the Rose Bowl. Lest we forget that it was Alabama that lost to Michigan in the Rose Bowl 2 years ago, and what turned out to be Nick Saban's last job as a head coach. He resigned, just the days later. After that, he stepped down and retired as coach. And so you're right. For the SEC, I think, for the dominance and even though they've, back-to-back Big Ten championships, still crowing that we're better top to bottom. I don't disagree with that, but I think that gap is closing. And but you're right. Here's a chance right now to kind of flex their muscles and prove they're still the big dog on the porch. A loss here really would be a signal, and I think in Georgia too. Georgia ends up, if you get another Big Ten champ, if it's a Big Ten team that wins this, and right now Indiana's the favorite, goes back to again and talking about the Big Ten evening the playing field.
No, yeah, no question. I think all three Big Ten, teams in Oregon and Ohio State, they all have legitimate shots of winning the national championship. And again, it comes down to playing your best ball at the right time. And as you can see, the margin for error is so slim. And what Alabama did against Oklahoma, rarely do you see a team recover from a 17-point deficit, especially in a playoff mindset game. And for them to do that on the road was truly an eye-opening experience. And I think it is an eye-opening experience for Alabama in itself, that no matter what the score may to say or what they're up against, they can overcome. And I look at that as being Indiana's chip on the shoulder that they've had for the last 2 years of being undersold and undervalued as a team. And they have all year long, and they still are in terms of how people view them. It's not been, at least for the last 2 weeks, that I think you start seeing the national media kind of start changing their tune when it comes to Indiana, especially when they beat Ohio State. But again, this game against Alabama, like I said, the storylines in it go far and wide when you look at it from different perspectives. And the fact that you have two coaches, the coaching staffs that have both coached at Indiana, is kind of unique in itself to think that all of a sudden Indiana is now the cradle of coaches in college football.
Sorry, didn't mean to laugh that hard, but yeah, you're right. That caught me off guard. You're exactly right. So that's crazy. I've got about a minute left. We've got 4 quarterfinal games. Look into your crystal ball quickly. Who do you think the 4 winners are coming out, moving on to the semifinals? We get to
yeah, well, I like Ohio State and their chances as well. And, I think that's going to be a chance for them. And then I'm losing track of my games here real quick.
Ole Miss, Georgia.
Ole Miss, Georgia. I just think Georgia's playing too good of football right now. The big one that I think is going to be interesting is Oregon and Texas Tech. Is that the one or no?
Yeah. Texas
Oregon
Tech.
And Texas Tech. That one's got a uniqueness to it because Oregon did not play great in the second half of that James Madison game, and to let James Madison score 34 points, even though the game wasn't in doubt, was kind of an eye-raising. What is going on here? So, and especially with Texas Tech, because they can put points on the board. So that will be the unique game. Although I do think Oregon will win that game in a physical mindset, because that's what they're going to have to do, be very physical. So I think we're going to see 4 great games. I think the first round of games that we've seen have been phenomenal, with the exception of maybe Tulane and Ole Miss. But I do think it's going to be 4 great games to watch over the holiday weekends.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Well, listen, my friend, Merry Christmas to you. Great to talk with you as always. And have fun with this ride. We know we'll be knocking on your door again to talk more Hoosier football.
Absolutely.
Because we don't think we're done.
Absolutely. Anytime, guys.
All right, Coach. Appreciate it. Shannon Griffith joining us once again. He's a lead football analyst for Hoosiers.com. It is number 1 Indiana taking on the 9-seed Alabama Crimson Tide in the Rose Bowl in Pasadena in the CFP quarterfinals. All right, we've got more to come. Stay with us here on the Sports IQ with Larry Smith. Okay, round 1 college football playoffs is behind us now. Producer Tony, I know you were there like I was, watching every moment. This was just compelling football. First 2 games, what we thought. Second 2 games, again, what we thought. Pretty lopsided.
Yeah, it wasn't anything we didn't expect. And, hats off to Miami and Alabama for advancing. They played great football, especially when they needed to down the stretches of both of those contests. And proved me wrong, because I thought neither one of them would advance, and they both did. So hats off to them. They played great. My problem, Larry, is the other two games were totally non-competitive. I know that James Madison scored some points in the second half, but the group of 5 teams, while it's nice to have one in there, I guess maybe if you have to for legal reasons, it's not like the college basketball tournament where you've got a 1 versus 16. You've got so many teams in, you can afford to let a few of these schools in and let them get their turn. Chances are they're not going to win. Yeah, you had Maryland Baltimore County beating Virginia one time, made for an awesome story, but they had no chance of winning the title. With so few teams in the college football playoff tournament, it's got to be teams that have a shot at the title.
Yeah. I think that I don't mind having one in. I agree there's it's unfortunate having two. And I guess one thing that changes for next year, I was reading, I believe it was Front Office Sports that reported this, that said next year there's already a memorandum of understanding signed that there'll be 5 conference champions in, the 4 from the Power 4, and then 1 from the Group of 5, Group of 6, whatever you want to call it. And so I guess in that case, that takes care of that because you won't have 2 from the Group of 5, Group of 6. Duke would have been in, but I know you don't like that scenario either. You were telling me in the break.
No, I don't. I don't think that that's a great scenario. If you want to, if let's say a Duke were to win, let's not award those spots to the automatic champion of the league. Let's award that spot to the highest rated team in that conference because of some quirky, stupid triple entendre, multiplier kept Miami from playing in the ACC championship game and gave us Duke in that game, which they played a great ball game, won the ACC championship. That's great. Does Duke belong in a field that purportedly is the 12 best teams in college football for that season? Sorry, no, they do not. Not with 5 losses. You've shown that you are not capable of winning the national championship based on your body of work during that regular season. So to me, you just created another problem. So instead of having, James Madison and Tulane, teams that were iffy on whether they belonged, you'd have maybe Tulane and Duke, still 2 teams that are iffy if they actually belong in this tournament to get to a national champion. You just can't. They have to figure something out. Make it the highest rated team from that conference, or the champion. Unless the champion is not in the top 10 in the final rankings, then your automatic bid goes to the highest rated team from your conference.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. And I think that's sort of what happened this year with Miami getting in. I know that wasn't the path they took, but we ended up at the same spots, if you will. But I have no problem with that at all because to your point, again, Duke was rated behind James Madison and Tulane, right? So that's where they were. That's what the committee thought of them in terms of how they do their rankings. And the whole idea to do this was make it much more, by the numbers, by the body of work, and not just subjective to a group of media or group of coaches. Some of whom have admitted they don't even watch the games and they have an assistant do the poll for them. So this is a group supposedly paying more attention to these. And I'm with you that I would hate to have one game like that and an automatic bid go to a team that doesn't deserve to be in. Basketball's different because those other teams are getting in anyway, right? But to your point, to have Notre Dame or Vanderbilt or BYU or Texas being left out when a Duke would get in, I think, again, it brings up another problem. I agree with that.
Yeah, because look, in basketball, if your team has a chance to win a national title, you're going to get in. There's going to find an at-large spot for you to get in. There's that many at-large spots. So you're taking a bit away, but are you taking a bit away from a team that was 16-14? Does a team that's 16-14 really have a chance to win the national title in basketball? Not really. Let's be honest about it. Does a team that's 10-2, like a BYU, or 9-3, like a Texas, have a shot? Especially as Texas was getting hot as the season was ending. Do they have a chance? Absolutely. So they deserve a spot to be in that tournament.
Yeah. And the next piece of this is the question of what will they expand and to how will they expand in 2026. We all know that, again, that that decision was supposed to be made on December 1st. They decided back in late November to extend it to a period to be announced. And so we'll see how this all plays out again. But we may have 14 teams, may have 16 teams, may still have 12 teams in 2026. We'll see how it goes. Here's the good thing is we're 2 years into this, and they do seem open to make changes as they did this year in terms to make this better. So we'll all be standing by and watching the boardrooms while we wait for the quarterfinal round coming up here on New Year's Day and around the change of the calendar. Okay, our moment of awe is up next.
Fans of big sports radio and sports spectacular podcasts have a new home on the Chief Sports Network. Find your favorite programs and content all in one place by downloading the Chief Sports app in your mobile device. Created in South Carolina, the Chief Sports Network is the home of an expanding network of live and podcast format programming. It is also the home of one of the leading national college football podcasts, JC and Morgan, hosted by ESPN's Mike Morgan and 24/7 Sports' JC Sherbert. Download the Chief Sports app for free and find all of your favorite programming under one easy umbrella. Thanks to all of our markets for your loyal support of Big Sports Radio and our Sports Spectacular podcast, and we look forward to connecting with you anywhere in the world on the Chief Sports app.
Okay, our moment of all today goes out to the unnamed person who spent $524,600 not on a new house, on a game-used Larry Bird jersey from his last NBA Finals run almost 40 years ago. By the way, Bird jerseys are considered holy grails for NBA collectors. As the Hall of Fame forward was known for using his jerseys over and over again. Some guys like to wear fresh jerseys every night or every series or whatever. Not for Bird. He would just say, wash that puppy. I'll put it on tomorrow. So because he used so few, it limits the number of available used game jerseys worn by Larry Bird out there in the resale market. By the way, this is the most ever paid for a Bird jersey, and we're sure that the next one sold will probably top this one. And that's our moment of awe. Thanks so much to our guests joining us, Marc Weiszer, Shannon Griffith. Thanks to you as well. Just getting started here on a Monday. It's a busy, busy week. Stay safe wherever you're going, and be sure to tune us in. We'll see you tomorrow here on the Sports IQ.
Thanks for listening to Sports IQ with Larry Smith, Monday through Friday. Continue the conversation at SportsIQ LS. We'll see you next time.